Take your
Before
time.
this session will be recorded, it will be shared on our YouTube by Monday. So please don't worry, folks. And yeah, over to you, Weber.
What up? What up? What up? How is everybody doing? Hope you're keeping well, healthy, happy, and so I'll join in and go through this because Harris and I have known each other for a minute now, and it's gonna be exciting to see what he has to share. He's built. He was the OG. I think outside of Chris, you were the OG integration guy. That started this whole all the integration. I don't know how many ones you've created, and obviously you've hammered HubSpot a lot. That's how I think a lot of people at least know us and know you through that piece. So cool, man. We're super excited to have you on board. Akash over here, who some of you have met, will be drilling into Harris's brain to understand how he does the things he does and what he has to share. But have all your questions dropped in onto the bottom of the chat. And I'm very confident we'll get Harris's help as and when there's questions. But before that, in true essence of now I know my Imperial and my fuck. We'll do this. There's Imperial and there's what's the other one? It has to be one more, right? There's Imperial and metric system. Yes, I got it. You right?
Yeah.
Okay, Imperial is the cooked one and the metric is the right one. That's what we say. The Americans will disagree to that, but it's all good. Look, the water boils at 100 degrees. Let's just leave it at that. Cool. Right. With that being said, welcome on board, everyone. Drop in where you are from, whichever part of the world you're in, whichever city you're in. Drop in where you are from. We'd love to know because it's always a global conference. I mean, global conversation with everyone. But with that being said, mic's on to Akash and Harris. On that note, maybe for everyone who may or may not know you in the off chance, Harris, I usually ask this as my my interview question, but I'm gonna give it away now. So my question, Harris, would you be is if you were to say one thing about yourself that would make everyone remember you by the end of the night, what would be that one thing you'd want to share?
Okay, interesting. That's a good question. Well, it's just like a random fun fact. I mean, it's really random. The actor John Cusack has a nephew. I won't share his name, but I was a camp counselor at a summer camp, and John Cusack's nephew was on my trip, and he ended up getting appendicitis during the trip. And I called in with a satellite phone and a seaplane. This is in like the Northwoods in Canada. We called in with a satellite phone, a seaplane, picked him up, like landed on the lake, picked him up, flew him out, flew him to the nearest hospital, and he totally could have died. He was fine, he was okay, but it was like really, really dicey. And so that's the most random and most memorable thing I can think of myself is that I saved John Cusack's nephew's life on a canoe trip in Canada.
Casual flex. Casual
Yeah,
flex.
it has nothing to do with Enterprise. I didn't even know who he was at the time. He was just a kid in this camp. And it's nothing to do with Enterprise or anything, but if you want to remember something, there you go.
You're an honest man. That's it. You didn't care about the fame and fortune. Awesome. Basic life support. Yeah, that's it. Cool. Well, we'll drop the mic onto Akash and Harris, and yeah, just run the show, sir. We're keen. Educate
Absolutely.
us.
Thank you for that, V. And once again, welcome to one other session of Smartlead Office Hours. My name is Akash, and I'm your Customer Success Manager. And today we have Harris Kenny, the founder of OutboundSync. So before I do the intro, Harris, I'll hand over the mic to you. So if you want to run down an introduction for yourself and about OutboundSync, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, well, it's a privilege to be here, and it's really flattering to see so many people joining in the chat. I just want to say, like, I definitely want this to be conversational, and the Smartlead team was saying like it's definitely how they like to do things too. So please go ahead and throw stuff in there, and looking forward to the conversation. Like Bob said, I've been working with Smartlead for a couple of years now. I mean, I think we were definitely one of the early customers, and just a huge believer in him as a founder, and then the team that he's built. And so to be here speaking with you all is truly a privilege. I believe in the platform, and what we're going to talk about today, and what I'm excited to talk about is, I think Now, I think Smartlead knows this because they see the signups on their website and they see their users. But I think most people don't understand the shift that's happening right now. And it is substantial. The types of companies that are looking at doing the multi-domain approach that all of us are familiar with, the budgets they have, the team sizes they have, just how big these companies are. I think that maybe people don't realize, because you're sitting in the Smartlead Slack, you're just talking about deliverability, or you're on LinkedIn and you see somebody post a cool workflow using Clay, and we all think of each other as like friends, and we are friends, but there are people that have been doing this stuff for a long time. Go-to-market people have been doing this stuff for decades, who are at big companies, who are seeing what people in this community are doing and are saying, hey, yeah, we should be doing that too. Actually, landing in the inbox is the most important thing, and focusing on deliverability. And they're shifting their tech stacks towards tools like Smartlead. And so I'm very excited to talk about that. I mean, our app integrates with CRMs, but I'm super excited. Like, in my mind, this is going to be it's kind of what we're seeing, because a lot of times they have the requirements that our application is trying to solve for, which is a small percentage of Smartlead users. Most Smartlead users don't need the things that we're going to talk about today, but some do. And so I'm really, really excited to talk about today. I mean, that's kind of what's in the back of my head. I feel like I'm seeing this happening, but most people don't know about it. And so I'm really excited to dig into that. And yeah, my name is Harris Kenny, founder of OutboundSync. We connect Smartlead with Salesforce and now HubSpot. HubSpot always. We're now in the HubSpot marketplace, and Salesforce, our beta, just went live this week. So yeah, really excited to chat with everybody, and thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Harris. And that's the juice of today's conversation, right? That's going to be the core. So talking about integrations, the first topic that we'll be covering is the need for a seamless CRM integration, right? So we know why it is important. As an early stage startup, you tend to have everything on sheets, etc. You upload documents, you run your campaigns, etc. But especially in an enterprise grade level, right? Why do you think a CRM integration is important, especially for GTM operations?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing, I think, that as these teams get bigger, what initially companies are just really focused on getting traction in the market. Most of the market doesn't know them. If they make a mistake, if they send a campaign to the wrong person or whatever, it's okay. The company itself is small. It oftentimes hasn't made specific claims about how they handle data or things like that. And so, and there's just more understanding and more grace, more tolerance for small companies. OutboundSync is a small company. I run a small company, but as companies get bigger, I would say the biggest thing that happens, the culture shift, is that it becomes a team sport where you can't get on a call with one person, basically. It's like there's always going to be multiple people. And what those multiple people represent, it's like an iceberg. Each person at that call represents a set of vested interests, like stakeholder concerns within that organization, about like, oh, well, I'm the Salesforce admin. It's very important to me that we not mess up our Salesforce data model. Or I'm the RevOps person. I've built workflows for how we handle new leads. And if you're going to plug in a whole new lead source, you have to play with the workflows that I have built, because they drive our funnel reporting, which go up to the board. Or, I'm a sales rep, and I'm really used to working in a certain way, handling my leads in a certain place. And if you're going to get me leads and they're not there, it's a problem. And I think the biggest thing is that what I'm noticing is that, like, any one of these people oftentimes can put a spanner in the, they can stop it. They can stop very successful campaigns from happening.
Right.
Because they feel like their concerns are not being met or they're not being listened to. And so, ultimately, the core need of the business is to grow, to reach new customers, to run good campaigns. But as the company gets bigger, there's more and more people who care about sort of things that are ancillary and related to that. And if we can address those things, then we can do the thing that they brought us in the first place. And then what I'm finding is that agencies in particular that are doing this are starting to unlock bigger and bigger budgets. Now we're seeing some of these companies say to their Smartlead agency, hey, we actually also want you to handle our inbound lead flow, because we see how good of a job you're doing creating new leads from nothing. What if we gave you something to work with?
Absolutely. Makes sense.
And so, if you can check the boxes and you can sort of meet the needs of the different people at the table, what I'm finding is that, basically, if you're on this call, you have like a 1% of a 1% skill set. you know how to develop new business the hardest way possible, which is like from scratch. And so, and there's some folks here, I see Justin's on here at Xbound. Like we were just talking about this. There are easier ways to make money than the stuff we do with Smartlead. This is like the hard mode. And so if you can combine the Smartlead approach with better inbound, with referrals and these other ways of selling, and I'm finding that these enterprise leaders are getting increasingly comfortable handing those opportunities to their Smartlead agencies. So that's kind of the shift that I'm seeing happening. Like if you can meet the needs, there's more budget, there's more opportunity. They want to hand these opportunities to a capable set of hands. And if you can do it the hard way, then you can do it the easy way too, right?
Absolutely. And we also, we covered a bit of my next topic as well, which is common challenges in scaling sales and marketing efforts without a streamlined process. The one thing that I can basically see is everything is all over the place, right? You don't actually know what's happening. You don't know which place of your process has a gap, and there's no record of everything that you do. So as a basic salesperson, these are a few things which will be solved with the streamlined process. And as you mentioned, one other thing that I come across is a lot of people don't want to keep juggling between tools. They don't want to be in the CRM for a while, on the sales engagement tool for a while, etc. They just want to have everything in one place, makes the job easier, saves a lot of time, and boosts productivity as well. So are there any other things that you see, Harris, as a common challenge that people face at this point without a streamlined process?
Yeah. So I think like one of the biggest things is block lists, like block and suppression criteria. The most common thing that I've seen stop a campaign that's about to get off the ground, or that does get off the ground and is getting positive replies, is all of a sudden like this one person gets emailed that it wasn't supposed to. And then that bubbles up to the right VP, and the VP is like, what the heck is going on? Who is this agency? Who is this person? And the agency is like, well, look, we just booked like 5 meetings like today, this morning. And they're like, yeah, well, you shouldn't have emailed this person. It's like, okay, yeah, okay, got it. We didn't mean to, whatever. And so it's like process, like you were saying, process around block and suppression lists. That can be a real showstopper. And so, part of what we've tried to build with our software, but you don't need to use OutboundSync, by the way. Like Smartlead just has a great API. We just try to make it easier. But you can build ways to dynamically build lists to check for people that meet those certain criteria. So I think like, again, like if I were to like overall a theme of what I've seen like with enterprises, like there's a lot of people that their foot like within these organizations, like hovering above the brakes, like looking for a reason to hit the brakes. Right. And then in our world, we're like, hey, gas, like step on the gas, let's go find these new opportunities. And so it's like, that's the biggest shift in mindset I'm seeing as we move up. So block list is a really big one. So I actually seen like a lot of tolerance for copy and like where we're using copy from. Handling opt-outs is one, depending on the promises they've made around like communication subscription preferences. That would be another one I would put probably secondary, but a thing. And then sometimes security concerns as well. And kind of how your organization, how your team operates. And then if you're within one of these teams, you're going to be familiar with this. Making sure that you are following and handling their data correctly. Because again, a lot of these big companies make promises when they go out to the market about how they operate.
Right. Thank you for this, Harris. And probably that brings us to our next question, showcasing what we have in place, right? So how can we leverage Smartlead and OutboundSync together? So the floor is for you. If you want to share a screen, if you want to show us how it works, great. I'd leave it to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And so I think that on a core level, I'll explain like how the application works. So we're taking webhooks in Smartlead, and we're taking that data, that live feed from Smartlead, and we're basically OutboundSync sits in the middle and it processes that data. So I'm going to just pull up like a little flow chart to kind of show you how it works. Just give me a second. And I see some nice comments in here. Jimmy, great to see you, by the way. Yeah, and I think that's great. I'm glad to hear that it feels like a positive conversation. So if anyone wants to drop in some questions right now, please feel free. And otherwise, I'm going to share my screen here right now. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
See a screen.
All right. Super. So basically, where Smartlead sits is the sales engagement platform right here. This is where the action's happening. And of course, you're familiar with Smartlead, so I'm not going to focus on Smartlead, like how it works. If you don't know how Smartlead works, you should reach out to their team. You should go to smartlead.ai, try it out. but I'm gonna assume for a second that you're familiar with Smartlead, that you've used it before. So hopefully that's okay. All right. So this is Smartlead here. Smartlead is going to be running, and when Smartlead is running, it's shipping. You're shipping campaigns. You're sending emails, and then they're going to get pushed over to OutboundSync. Primarily, we're using the webhook, so emails are sent, replied. We've got opens, clicks, lead category updates, unsubscribes, and bounces. Those are the 7 primary events that we're supporting right now as a platform.
Right.
And so that data goes into OutboundSync, and I'm going to show you what it looks like on the HubSpot side. But basically, what we're doing is we're prepping that webhook to be pushed into HubSpot, and then we've got some receiving endpoints inside of HubSpot, so that when that data lands there, it lands in a way that HubSpot wants to see it, basically. Now, I just want to take a minute to call out that Smartlead has a very good and robust native integration for HubSpot. Where people choose to use OutboundSync is that a lot of times they want like timeline events, and they like the associations between contacts and companies. I'll show you what that looks like. But if you're on a team and some of those features don't seem necessary to you, you should try Smartlead's native integration first. And only if you want these other things, do you need OutboundSync? You don't necessarily need to have it by any means. But the timeline events, which I'll show you in a second, are kind of, I think, where we really kind of begin to create value for teams.
Right.
So we send that data over into HubSpot, and then you can use that to drive other things within the CRM. So lists of identifying whoever we reached out to so far, basically rebuilding the master inbox, where are interested replies, how do they sit inside of HubSpot, triggering workflows where you're rotating leads within HubSpot to different sales reps based on their territory or based on the vertical or things like that. Reports is another one. The main question that people have is the engine running, and are my campaigns sending or not? And then updating and associating properties, which is something that we're slowly doing more and more of. And then the last thing I'll just mention here is the block list, which I'll talk about in a second. So this is just kind of an overview of the flow of data between the platforms. And then what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pull up our knowledge base, because I don't want to share anything I shouldn't be sharing. So rather than actually, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull it up off screen. I'm going to pull up a test account. Give me 1 second.
Perfect.
Turn this off. Let me just catch my breath here for a second while I get this test account pulled up. Let's just see. Oh, some very kind Kyle, very kind comments in the chat box. Let me just stop here. Let's see, while I'm pulling this up, if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like us to focus on in particular. I don't know if they want to drop it in the chat or if they're using the Q&A. Are we using the Q&A here, Akash, or no?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now it's on the chat, but we also have a Q&A at the end of the session where they can unmute themselves, go for it, and ask questions directly. Okay,
perfect. Okay, so if you've got anything, just drop it in the chat. Anything you'd like to see in particular, any concerns, any specific ideas that you'd like, ideas or goofy things that you wonder if they're possible. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up our test account. All right. And the first thing, I'm excited to kind of break some news here today. This is the first time I've talked about this publicly because it just happened this morning. And I'm gonna show this. I've not done this live before. So if this goes wrong, I apologize. Let's see if this works. Okay, cool. So literally this morning, I got the email that we got approved. And so OutboundSync is now in the HubSpot app marketplace. And so now, smart leaders, if you look up Smartlead in HubSpot, we've got a footprint there, which is pretty exciting. So anyway, yeah, so this is where you can go if you use HubSpot, you want to check it out. You can install OutboundSync in your account, and I'll show you how we're doing some of this test stuff. So I'm really excited about that, and I really appreciate the Smartlead team helping us get to this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the application really quick. So we're going to sign in with HubSpot. I'm going to pick my test account. I'm going to install it and approve those scopes. And cool. So what I'm going to really show you is some test data. So we built a testing modal inside of our application that allows you to send custom webhook payloads into HubSpot. And so I'm going to show you that test data today. So Jane Doe is our fake contact. And we're able to push communication over to this fake person through OutboundSync. And so where we're seeing the magic is that these timeline events, basically like when events occur, an email is sent, a reply is received, a lead is marked as interested. That is what we want to use to trigger other things.
Right.
Contact assignment, start tracking attribution. So from a revenue perspective, one of the biggest things that we see these bigger teams asking for is attribution. Like, how do I know that this lead that came from outbound resulted in revenue? And so we're writing to a few different properties. And again, like you can take this and you can imitate this in your own way. You don't need to use OutboundSync to do this. But there are several properties that we're writing to so that when we build reports down the line, we can get credit and say, hey, Outbound generated this opportunity. Outbound generated this pipeline. And what we've seen is that when teams start measuring this time and time again, the outbound effort is way outperforming what they were getting credit for. And oftentimes outperforming the other channels that cost way more money. So you've got like a trade show budget of like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars where they're sending out all these people, doing all these things. And then in the background, you've got just this little outbound engine running, getting replies, booking meetings. And when you put them up against each other inside of a dashboard, inside of, the CRM, it totally shifts the conversation of like, hey, where did those deals come from? Oh, cold email? Huh. Okay, got it. And the problem that as outbound folks that we get a lot of pressure for is like, what have you done for me lately? And sometimes that question, if we're operating outside of the CRM context, if we're operating outside of being able to put our work up against the other work that's being done, then it's really easy to pick it apart. But the question is not like, yes, it's how are we doing, but it's also compared to what? How is our cold email effort doing? Yes, that matters. But how's the cold email effort doing compared to other ways that the company is spending money to try to generate new leads? And this is where I think the efficiency of a good scaled outbound campaign really stands out. But the only way to answer that question is you have to be in the system of record. You have to be alongside the other things that they're doing. Otherwise, you're just like giving them a spreadsheet or you're showing them like you're using Smartlead analytics, but because it's separated, it's just too difficult for teams to reconcile and build side-by-side reports. So yeah, that's, like we push this stuff in, you can see how it lands in the CRM, but ultimately like the underlying thing we're trying to solve here is like, we want our work to be on the level with the other things that these teams are doing to try to generate new leads. That's kind of like the core problem that we're trying to solve for smart leaders who are working with these bigger teams. Because it's hard, and like the most often like failure mode that I see is that the outbound group or agency or internal team is not getting sufficient credit for their work. Because the other channels like paid ads, stuff like that, like Google and LinkedIn and these other platforms that do paid ads, like they've built integrations into HubSpot. They've built attribution for all these things. They've provided free trainings and they fly marketers out to their conferences and they provide the dashboards automatically. Like they obviously have it's part of their value that they provide as platforms. And so we're competing against that. And so it's hard, it's not a level playing field.
Absolutely. And that's one of the main things.
Go ahead, Akash.
It's basically the reporting as well. So as you mentioned, at the end of the day, it's the data, right? And it's great to have it in one place. And that's something that I see where people have with the integration, you can push data, you can have everything else, but these are things that people are starting to see. And especially when you enter the enterprise level, these are things like that are must have, right? You want to see what's happening across. Fair enough. And is there a way
definitely.
Is there a way you can demonstrate how to create an automated workflow, Harris? Like,
of course.
Yeah, please. We'd love to see that because we know what we do. We know what Smartlead does, what OutboundSync does. But if you can actually show us a way to demonstrate a workflow, that would really help our users here as well.
Absolutely. All right. Someone give me an idea in the chat about a type of workflow you want to see. Or Akash, you can use your imperial host powers and you just give me an idea. But yeah, give me an idea.
I'll probably say, reducing, any workflow that might reduce manual intervention that can actually end up in a sped up process, something like that. I don't want to be too specific. Something that you've seen, which is reduce them. There's one on the chat as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let me see the chat. Hold on. Let me open that chat. CRM okay, cool. Yeah, CRM automation workflow. Okay, so let's automate something inside of CRM for sure. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Justin Baum, thank you. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's do an example where let's just say we have a pooled approach. So we have an agency or an internal team that has a bunch of connected accounts
Okay.
in Smartlead. So they've got, let's
Right.
just say like 100 domains with 100 different email accounts. But we need to map those sending accounts to users in HubSpot. So
Right.
let's say we take like a territory-based approach. And when a and let's just say further that these contacts don't already exist in HubSpot. They don't already have an owner. Because if they did exist in HubSpot, then when OutboundSync pushed it over, then it would just update the existing record. But let's just say they don't. So they don't have an owner, right? And so we're going to do when an outbound campaign occurs, and a sent email is known, we are going to do a branch. And let's say we have, let's say we've got, okay, so I'm gonna include our commenters here in our workflow. Okay. So we have our Justin branch, we have our Bohm branch, hopefully I'm saying that right. And then we have our Akash branch, and then we have everyone else. Okay, so for our Justin branch, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use OutboundSync's custom contact properties to see the latest campaign that was used, that this email was associated with, right? And let's just say on the Smartlead side, when we build our campaigns, we put the name of the sales rep at the beginning of the campaign. Right? So, excuse me. Yeah. So if so there's one way to do this is you could say, okay, if the campaign name is from Justin, and the campaign starts with Justin, then what we're going to do is I'm just going to build this out for the Justin branch, and then we can mirror it for everybody else.
Absolutely.
We would set the owner to, okay, now I don't have Justin here in this case, right? But we would rotate the record owner basically to Justin as the owner of this account inside of HubSpot, right? And then we could also like create a task to follow up. So this is our sent email, so that wouldn't work. So I'll talk about follow up in a second. So this is really basic. All we're doing here in this case is like really simple workflow. We've got 1, 2, 3 sales reps. We've got a fallback option here. I'll answer that in a second, Mohammed. Good question. We've got a fallback option here in case somehow our campaign manager forgets to tag a name or something like that. And then what we're doing is we're pushing these contacts into HubSpot and we're assigning them based on the campaign name. So that's a situation where we have a dedicated campaign for each user within the organization. But let's just say we don't do that. Let's say the sending is totally pooled. So what that means is that like you don't have a dedicated account. You just have a single account, a single campaign, I mean, and you want to rotate based on the from address that's used by Smartlead when it's cranking through all the different sending accounts. Well, in that case, we could add, we could use the contact property group, and we could do the, let's see, we could do who the email was from. So we can do last sender address. And so this is the email address of the sending account. So if the email address of the sending account contains Justin, then in that case, we want to rotate that owner.
Awesome.
And I got a good question from Richard.
That's what I was circling back as well. So because in case if there's any change in name, do you do it by each mailbox? Or this is great.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So in this case now, because we're using the center address, we're doing it by mailbox. Okay, and so Richard's asking, okay, can I do all of these things with make.com? Yes and no. Part of it is that as your volume goes up, it starts to get very expensive. So we've handled 1.5 million webhooks from Smartlead at this point. And as your volume goes up, using a make.com or a Zapier starts to get really expensive because you're charging per run. The next is that if you want to have these properties, if you want to do this in make.com, you will have to create your own custom app inside of HubSpot in order to have these endpoints to write to. So if you're using a Make or a Zapier, by default, like these properties that we're using for this routing, they don't exist as endpoints in HubSpot. And so if you want to build, you basically have to make the app to trigger these events if you want to have the workflow be managed inside of HubSpot. And that is typically what these teams are wanting. They're wanting to run this inside of the CRM. So these are a couple like routing just on sent. And then like once you have assignment to the sent contacts, like you can do omni-channel workflows. You can trigger call tasks. You can trigger LinkedIn tasks based on, for example, the lead category. So I think that would be an interesting one to do next, of showing like lead category based routing based on lead category ID. But let me just jump in here. Plans to integrate with Airtable. We don't have plans to integrate with Airtable at the moment. Mohammed, if you want to expand on that, I'd be curious what you mean by that. If you mean like Airtable as an endpoint, like we have Salesforce and HubSpot, or yeah, if you could expand on that question, I'd be curious to hear what you think there. Okay, and then I'm seeing some chatter here about like relative tags and how to relate, and how those tags relate to the others within the CRM, efficient use of tags, and the relativity of the reps, vertical and segment, and selection to that particular campaign when automating from the start. Yeah, so okay, there's a really good point being made here in the chat. So this requires preparation. So if you want to route based on like vertical or use case or something like that, you need to think from the very beginning about how you name your campaigns, because we can use those campaign names for a lot of really advanced routing and logic. Right. And you could also use your campaign naming convention to trigger like different types of enrichments. So let's say we have a workflow. I'm just going to start a new one here. Where, okay, it's going to be a contact-based workflow, and we get a reply from our Smartlead campaign.
Right.
Okay, so the reply occurred is known. Okay, and now what we want to do is, and let's just say further that the campaign name contains omnichannel. Okay, so this would be a campaign where the campaign manager or the campaign operator determined in conjunction with the internal team that, hey, this is a really high value list. We want the sales reps to do phone call follow-up. We want to go omni-channel. We want to use Smartlead to land in the inbox, but we also want to do phone calls. We want to do LinkedIn.
Right.
Well, one way to do that would be marking that through the campaign name and including like something like omni-channel in there. There are other ways to do that, but let's just like use this as an example.
Sure. Because this
if
is an
you have
active
those
workflow,
Go ahead.
right? Because this is an active workflow. When based on what I talk to people, they need this. They use Smartlead for deliverability, which is great, but they also want to experiment all the other channels, and this is going to be useful for a lot of them.
Yeah, definitely. And like I'll just say like my philosophy is this: if you're using our product and how I think about this, and for these bigger teams, like the CRM is the source of truth. Now, there are some companies that are using like Snowflake and Databricks and some of these data warehouse tools, but for most of us, like the CRM is the source of truth. So the question is like, how do I get Smartlead to talk to my CRM really fluently so that I can use it as the launchpad for other things? So, you know, if in this case, like with this workflow, we've got a campaign, the campaign operator or manager set it as omni-channel, and then we got a reply, and we only, let's just say we want to call replies to follow up on replies, but you could do this for anything.
Right.
HubSpot would be the place where the phone number is, and then you'd pick a dedicated calling tool, just like you have a dedicated emailing tool. You could pick Phone Burner, you could pick Orem, you could pick Allaware. There's a bunch of dialing tools, and then you can have that dialing activity happen feeding off of HubSpot, syncing back in. Same thing with LinkedIn. And you know, you can build manual LinkedIn touches very easily into these HubSpot workflows. And like I personally do LinkedIn stuff manually. And so there's ways to build that in here, no problem. So this would be, so we've got this. Now let's say like you're paying for a Zoom info and you're automatically having Zoom info enrich your CRM. Great. Then you just make that call task, right? You just create that task, you set it as a call task, and you assign it to the lead or to the contact owner, and you can put the prospect's name in there, which you're going to get from Smartlead. Smartlead's as long as you included the name data in your initial import to Smartlead, that's going to flow all the way through. And then, you know, there you go. And then you can drop the phone number in here, right? Just in case, whatever. Now, let's say you don't have a Zoom info that's going out, right? You don't have phone numbers in there for whatever reason. Here's our have phone branch. And then we're going to move this under have phone. And then we have our don't have a phone. We can use workflows inside of HubSpot. For example, you could go out to a clay table, you could go to Make, you could go to Zapier, and you could go enrich, get that phone number, push it back into HubSpot, and then have that task be created after the fact, triggered by this workflow, and then kind of ripple all the way through. And I've got some videos on how to do that I posted on YouTube. It just takes a little time to kind of build that out and show it. And
fair enough.
If people have questions about that, I'm happy to talk about that more. And so basically, as we talk about omnichannel, the point I would make is it's a false choice to say either I use Smartlead and I get deliverability, or I use an all-in-one platform and I have to sacrifice deliverability. That's not true. If you're integrating with your CRM, you can use your CRM as the platform to orchestrate those other channels, and you can have email deliverability. You do not have to choose one or the other. You do not have to choose subpar email deliverability just because you also want to call somebody. That is not the case. What you just need an orchestration platform. So the orchestration platform is either your sales engagement tool, or in our case, what we're supporting is the CRM is the source of truth. That's where your deals are. That's where your meetings are booked. That's where your opt-outs are being tracked. I believe it should happen there. And then from there, you connect the best deliverability tool that you can find for your channel. Because by the way, there's certain tools that are much better for phones. And I just philosophically, I just think the odds of one platform getting every single channel right forever, at no point in the future would that platform ever be less effective. I just don't think that's I don't think that's very likely. I think at some point someone's going to slip, even if they figure everything out one time.
Right. And now, as you mentioned, go for the best in each, and you have a workflow where you can control everything from one place.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
And before we jump to the last round of Q&A, one of the things that we always cover from your end is best practices, right? So
sure.
Do you have any best practices to maximize the benefits of integrating Smartlead with HubSpot and Salesforce? As that you say, you do a lot of this. So
yeah, absolutely. So honestly, the first thing I'll say is start with the block list. If you email the person that you don't want to email, it's just gonna jam everything up. Start with the block list. Start with who do we not want to email. And I think you can use that to define, okay, then who do we want to email? So your block list includes people who have opted out, but it also includes closed won deals. And so it's a really natural segue into let's talk about these closed won deals that you don't want us to email. Who are they? Who's your ICP? Why do you want to email these people? Are there types of deals you want more of or less of? So I would say start with the block list. Right. Then make a decision about where are the replies going to be handled. Do you want replies to be handled inside of the CRM, or do you want them to be handled inside of Smartlead? We can support both workflows. We have customers doing both. Doesn't matter. But you just have to decide what is the system of action for the sales rep? Where is the sales rep going to be doing their thing? And then reporting. So now that I'm leaving a lot out. I'm assuming you know how to use Smartlead.
These are the key ones.
Campaigns. These are the ones outside of the obvious, write good copy, build a good list. All those. Go to Smartlead's University if you don't know those things. But then reporting. So now that we got our program up and running, we're getting replies in. The sales rep knows how to handle them. Who needs to know what so that we can invest and build in this program over time? Because like any program, these take time to build and to get better. Benjamin has been talking about this a lot this week of the challenges with the current SDR model and where it's going, and how people have this idea of well, if I don't get $1 million in revenue in the first week, this program is a failure. It's no, these programs take time. And so the way to buy yourself time to build and get buy-in from other internal stakeholders within the organization is reporting. Show them the engine's running, show them the progress that you're making, show them the quality of leads that you're generating, and the cost of acquiring those leads versus the cost of acquiring that trade show lead that you just got that cost, whatever, $15,000 to get that one meeting.
And it's all experiments at the end of the day. We're trying,
exactly.
Learning.
Exactly. Yeah. And it might not work. Right. But at least you can say we tried and here's what happened, instead of you have a few meetings in a row where they're where are the leads? And then the engagement just fizzles out. And that stinks.
Absolutely.
If you
aligned.
try it and it doesn't work and you can say, here's why it didn't work. Okay. Like that's fine. It's science. We try to learn, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Identify the
we want to
gap,
give
bridge
ourselves
the
a shot.
gap.
Exactly.
Awesome. So without further ado, I think, I had questions segmented, but you had one shot where you covered everything, the workflows, how you can build your workflows, etc. But lastly, before we jump into the Q&A, one last question is, how can teams continue scaling effectively while maintaining data integrity and operational efficiency, Harris?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the biggest thing I've seen for teams that want to scale up is they have an internal expert who can talk the talk. Whether they build an internal program or they work with an agency, there's at least one person who kind of owns this initiative internally.
Right.
Because, this is a change. This is a different way of doing things. It's similar, but it is different. And there will be times where someone has to call in a favor and they need to get approval for something, or they need to get something reviewed. For a program to be anything more than a little test that's happening in a little place, you've got to have an internal champion who's going to help have the conversations with the security team, who's going to help get buy-in for additional budget so we can go get more pay for more lead magic credits or spin up more domains or whatever. So I would say when I think of scale, I think of like longevity, and in order for these programs to grow, you need those internal champions who are going to make the case. Because I've seen bigger companies people can like get away with like playing around, doing a little test here or there, and that's a really good way to start. But if you want to break out of that and increase your retainers, or if you're an internal team, just like increase your program, you've got to have that internal champion who can get the program up to the next level. Because there's like a false summit of like, we closed the deal, we're running our first campaigns, we're using Smartlead for the first time, but it's like a false summit. You're not like fully integrated yet to what they're actually like their go-to-market plan for the next like 2 to 3 years.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for that, Harris. And that was all from my end. So probably we'll open the floor for questions. So users, people, if you guys have any questions, please raise your hand. I'll spotlight you and I'll unmute yourself. You can straight away have your questions asked. Justin has a question on chat. So Harris, do you want to see that? Or do you want me to read it for you?
Oh yeah, no, I can read it, no problem. Prospects that internal champion every time, 6-week trial and champion thoughts. Yeah, so there's a couple ideas here, right? So the question is like, how do we find that internal champion? Well, I'll tell you the first thing is that like there's a chance that that internal champion who might advance this program forward, they might be in Smartlead Slack already. They might be following Smartlead already. They might be commenting on a Eric Nowoslawski video. I've had conversations with an internal champion where we've been talking to them for over a year. I've been talking to them, to this one person in particular. They're bought in, but they need buy-in from other parts of the org. Now it has taken over a year, and they are in September going to be standing up a program. And what they needed was things that they could show to other people to show this is legit. So yeah, I would say like if they're biting, like don't work them too hard. If you get engagement from that internal champion or you see them leaning in, try to figure out what is it that they need other people in the organization to see to move forward. Because there's the odds are I'm thinking of a few. I don't want to say the names, but I'm thinking of a few companies right now. I can name the people right now off the top of my head, but I'm not going to do it. Who are like this. They are championing the bit. They want to move forward with this program. I had a CRO. This is last week. I swear to God, this is real. It sounds like a fake LinkedIn post. It was a CRO on a call, and he was like, look, like if it's landing in spam, like I just, we've already got our budget set for the year. It's like, yeah, but you're going to be landing in spam for the next 4 months. Your budget should be 0 to land in spam. Like, what is the point of that? And, and sometimes I have these conversations with these folks, and they're really frustrated. If you're one of those people and your organization, if they can't get alignment around doing this, you might find yourself, your skills are valuable. You might find yourself building a program somewhere else. I'll just say that. If you're a manager who has someone like this, who's watching this, know that person that wants to do this, their skill set's valuable, and they might build this somewhere else. If you want to keep them, you should give them a chance to try something. And if you're trying to sell into that org, figure out who are the blockers, what are the needs that those other stakeholders have, because it's those other people that are probably stopping them from moving forward. It's not like lack of motivation or lack of knowledge. They're probably really annoyed that they can't just start ripping campaigns. with Smartlead.
Absolutely.
They're probably really annoyed about it, probably more than you, even though you want to
Yep.
work with them. That I've seen that, and I feel that from folks. All right, I see some raised hands. I'm going to shut up.
Right. Thank you for that, Harris. And Justin, I hope that answers your question. So Nate, if you can turn on your video, I'll spotlight you. Yep, thank you for that. Here you go. Can you unmute yourself? Yep. Awesome.
Yeah.
Go
Hey,
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Hey, thanks, Harris, for going over all that. Great stuff. Hey, I had a quick question. So I know you said you can, I think, like end up syncing based off various like types of webhooks for like campaigns and stuff. Could you choose just to do it, I guess, at the end of a campaign, so that when they go into HubSpot, that means like that would essentially mean like the reps know that the email campaign sequence is done, so they can then load them to, I guess, like a call only, which they can then dial from, or okay.
Yeah, great question. So currently, okay, so that's something we could build support for in the future. Let me see how it works right now. If you had a set number of emails in your sequence, if you had like 3, you could trigger a workflow off of like sequence email number 3. When that happens, we're going to consider it closed. Smartlead has recently, well, kind of recently, introduced like a campaign status webhook. That's something that we could support in the future. We don't right now, but we definitely could, and we could use that campaign status to trigger what you're talking about. So there's a way to do it today, and I think there's a better way to do it in the future if that's something you're interested in. Typically, we kind of listen to users, and if they say they want something, we kind of go there. I'll say that we're looking at building a custom object inside of HubSpot for the campaigns. So it would be a campaign object inside of HubSpot, which I think would complement really nicely what your idea that you just suggested.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I figure like I kind of like the waterfall methodology in terms of like an outbound, where it's like, okay, well, we're gonna handle all of the emails on the front end, and then once this is all completed, then the reps can just focus on like dialing, and then after that, maybe send another webhook for just LinkedIn or something like that. But yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's a great question. I think that I tend to agree with you. I think it's easier for the rep to manage it that way. You can do this orchestrated like email, phone across platforms. You can totally do it.
I haven't.
But it's
Yeah,
a lot easier.
I think
for the
it's
rep
hard
otherwise.
to get the timing correct based off like, the mailboxes and like the sending and making sure it's like exactly so that, because like if it overlaps and it's off, then it's gonna, I guess, cascade. But
Yeah. I'm with you. If I don't want my reps to hesitate, if I wanted to just go out and like execute, I would totally do what you're saying. I'm with you.
Right on. All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
I mean, we all like the visual of the sequence where it's like pop, and it looks really neat. But it's like the reality is we've got a sales rep sitting in front of their computer being like, what do I do today? And we want them to just like pick up the phone and just feel great calling and not be worried about like,
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Great question.
Awesome. Any other questions? If yes, you can drop it in the chat or raise your hands. I'll spotlight you. And for those of you all who joined late, the meeting is being recorded, so it will be pushed out on our community and on YouTube on Monday. So just as an FYI.
Just as an FYI. All right, if you don't have any questions, I just want to I'll drop in a quick message. But I don't know. Does anyone have any questions? Last chance, everyone. Justin, I can see you there, mate. How you going? Hey. All right. Cool. If there's no more questions, I just want to drop in one quick thing. I think we've all seen it all across LinkedIn with respect to Google and the fun little. They're pushing that rollout hard. Like I've never seen Google push that rollout as like a genuine rollout that hard, but they've pushed that rollout hard. So everyone is now getting messages, even on their phones, everywhere, saying, and they did something very sneaky, which is not the best thing to do, but I get what they're trying to do. If you look at on a user experience perspective, they use the same formatting as what would be used to mark an email or tag an email as spam. Right? They could have used something else. They could have put it like in like a pink, orange, or anything of the brand colors. But they use the same exact setup. So I actually got this message several weeks ago. I just ignored it because I thought that was just asking me to spam someone, like mark some spam, and I was like, maybe let's not do that. Right? Who knows if they're actually a Smartlead customer? But then the other day I realized that that's actually a very sneaky, dirty move they've done, which is, or whatever move you want to call it, they've done, where they've given the same emblem as, preview emails or preview images as the same as mark an email as spam. So for just a reference point for everyone over here, Harris probably knows this, the way most popular tools do, or most tools do in somewhat common practice, is it inject a tiny little baby pixel into the email, and when that pixel is rendered or opened, the assumption is that the email is viewed or opened or whatever it is, right? It's similar to when you open an image, that request goes through and fetches that data. Now, there's nuances to how you can make it more accurate, improved, and so on and so forth, but that's the baseline crux of it. So what Google has basically done, remember, the point over here is rendering. So what Google's done is they found a nice little sneaky way to prevent images from being rendered. So now it's not even the fact that open rates are like being affected or delivery being affected. That's not even a concept. It simply just means people are actually opening your emails and you actually don't know because they literally don't want you to know that your email is being opened, right? So what's next is going to be a fun one for a lot of us to actually see how it goes on. Now, the common ways, Harris, maybe a question for you, then maybe I'll parlay in. What's something you think people can do now to sort of offset this in some way?
Yeah. So yeah, the idea is like if we're turning off open tracking, I've seen people, it's funny because while open tracking is kind of maligned, I guess, and a lot of people don't do it, we have users who have been using the open track as an indicator of interest, and it's been working like pretty well for them. Like, so it, I think that probably link, the problem with link, like you probably run into the same thing with link click tracking too. I think that probably what I would do would be some kind of reporting where I'm looking at a combination of the Smartlead lead category that's getting assigned. And then if you're also using a CRM, like using your real world rep updated data of like which leads move forward with the lifecycle stage. Because sometimes you get a reply where it's neutral and so Smartlead doesn't categorize it. But then if the rep isn't in Smartlead, they don't update Smartlead. So the Smartlead record isn't current, where it's like, oh, this was actually a good lead. It got moved forward to a sales qualified or deal opportunity or whatever. So I would say using a combination of Smartlead and then whatever the rep is manually curating in terms of the data, and then trying to like map out and say like anything that is an interested reply, trying to infer like that those are better types of leads. But at the account level, there's nothing you can do with email. I mean, you can go omni-channel, or you could just try to infer from leads that move forward that like let's go try to find
Fair
more
enough.
like that in general,
on an account
right?
perspective, that's some information. So you're drawing
Yeah.
sort of you're trying to draw parallels to some extent. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool, fair enough.
exactly. Or just go omni-channel. And I think it's the other
or
one. It's like you
omnichannel.
just
Makes sense.
pick up the phone and stuff like that. But no,
Makes
it's a tricky one because it's useful. And like also like almost every single platform that does any sort of email provides this as a metric. And I think that frankly, like users don't care generally. You can turn off images from loading if you want. I have that. I've done that on my personal email. So this is a tricky one. I'm surprised a little bit how they've done it as well.
No, that's fair. I think they're just trying, because the thing is, it's okay, the outbound stuff, fair enough, whatever, but it also impacts a lot of the newsletters, right? Like all the newsletters, they like every newsletter of mine now has that banner showing up at the top. So it's quite clear that's what's happening left, right, and center. So interesting for those set of people. But what I did want to share is
just render an image, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just drop an image in there, I guess. So it's not, so that it's not invisible, I guess.
True, very true. But here's the thing to remember or keep in mind is it's not stopping images from being rendered. That's not what's happening. It's stopping invisible or like images that are hidden from being. There's a very, very stark difference. So Google's being very sneaky over here because they know the Klaviyo's, the active campaigns, the MailChimps, its newsletters are meant to look nice and fluttery and fluffy and pretty with images. They're not doing that. If you're hidden an image, that's when they show that. So very specific, right? So they're trying to take on people.
Here's my Smartlead product idea. What if you were to put your logo in the footer and you'd use that logo image as like as the tracking image instead of an invisible one? I know that
you can.
Some people
can do that.
Yeah.
You can do that, or you don't need to do open tracking at all. And we've got a fun one coming up in about. Sorry, I'm gonna steal that and parlay into the next thing, which is we've got a fun one coming out in about a week's time. So everyone, feel free to refresh your application on the Friday or Monday the week after, and hopefully we fix this all together for everyone. And it's come as a nice little what's it called? A nice little God's blessing that Google has decided to do this right when we're about to release a complete new revamped way of tracking deliverability. So let's see how it goes. But that's also a cool idea, by the way, to drop in your logo and make that a custom, make it custom so people actually don't know that is an image. That's actually very cool. It's a good one. That's a good one, Mr. Kenny. That's a good one.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a good one as
Well,
well.
of course you're working on stuff. I mean, I'll just wrap by saying I'm so excited about being here and appreciate the opportunity. And change is always happening, right? Change is the only constant. And here's the thing: it's like if you're going to be in a foxhole, who would you rather be in that foxhole with than the Smartlead engineering team? I mean, you know they're going to come up with something. They, it's just like rabbit out of the hat, time and time and time and time again. So I love you. I can't wait. I genuinely don't know what's coming.
I know.
I'm very excited to learn about it. I really don't know what it is.
I know we're being super
my
shush about it.
expectations are very high.
Yeah, we'll hope we live up to it. We've been very shush about it, but it's been fun because of seeing what's happening with the whole Google thing. So it'll be a fun one, but easy peasy. So just a nice little call out for everyone. Look forward to it next week, and hopefully we keep making you print some more money. Is there any closing marks from Akash or?
Yep, you covered it all.
Covered it. All right. Well, thank you. As always, as we say, there's 3 constants in life. There's taxes, death, and office hours on Thursdays. I will see you all next week. Thank you. Take care and goodbye.